So to the outline we go. Let's give you an outline of the outline. We're going to go through some initial resources to explore first. These are things that I think people should be very aware of in terms of research-based practices out there and articles to look at about flipped learning in specific, and some of them are really tied to higher ed. Then I'm going to go through a couple of slides, my journey into the flipped classroom, which started with me getting called for jury duty about 2 years ago. So I'll go through that interesting story. What I would call the meat and potatoes of this workshop are all of my case studies, going from kind of the simplest at the top down to the most complex. These are case studies, things I've done in the past, things I've used the iPad for to make screencasts for a variety of different coaching situations. You can see we have examples from math, science, ELA, even physical therapy examples, and showing you how to really customize and personalize your productions using the picture-in-picture cameras. I'm a big fan of that. I think every screencast should always have your face on it, even if it's just for the first couple of seconds, so that student feels that they have a connection to a person and not just a computer screen that they're looking at to learn from. So I'll show you how to do that in some of the iPad apps. And these are short links to all of the apps that I'll be talking about today. You can see some of them are free, some are paid. And then when you're using the more traditional platforms, which is what I'm using right now, a laptop or a desktop, Jing, Snagit, and Camtasia are my preferences for that on more of a traditional standpoint. But we're going to focus most of our time today using the iPad for making your screencasts. We'll leave some time at the end for questions and independent work time. That way the three of us can float around the room while you guys are working on testing out some of these apps, and we'll answer your questions too. And as we mentioned at the end, door prizes, so stick around to the end and we'll make sure that you get a chance to pick up something on your way out. All right, so let's take us here to our initial resources to look at. This was a document here that I came across, sponsored by Pearson, so I have to give that little disclaimer up front. But I thought they did a very good job showing specifically how flipped learning is being used in higher education. Has anyone seen this study or seen this article? Okay, so I recommend you take a few moments looking at this, not right now obviously, but when you get a chance. Really breaks down why flipped learning is advantageous at the higher ed level. And if you think about it, since this flipped learning concept's catching on in the K-12 world, it's just a matter of time, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, where those students that have been middle and high school students, the ones I'm teaching now, reach you guys at the college level, they're almost going to expect that there's not an instructor at the front of the class lecturing for the majority of the time. Even though that might be a method that works well, it's worked well in the past, these students are going to be not as prepared for that as previous generations of students. Because in the K-12 world, there is a big push now to move flipped learning or blended learning so that the teacher is able to float around the room, that's really the goal, and work in small groups and one-on-one, and the teacher doesn't do what I'm doing right now all the time. Sometimes yes, but more the minority of the time rather than the majority of the time. So that's a good article to take a look at initially. Another one I have is the flippedlearning.org website. Has anyone heard of the man named John Bergman or Aaron Sams? I didn't think so. That's really a specific K-12 thing. Those two guys are credited as being the fathers of flipped learning, going back to about the mid-2005 to 2007 timeframe. One was a science teacher, one was, I think they're both science teachers. One was chemistry, one was middle school science. They had the idea of let's record ourselves and have our students learn from our videos instead of us lecturing all the time. It seems like a simple concept. It's actually been done for many decades. But that officially coined the term flipped learning, as they now both work for as independent consultants and for the Flipped Learning Network, and they talk about, actually presented with John last summer at Buffalo State, about how flipped learning is changing the world of education in terms of being able to, as I say, outsource yourself to yourself. So you're not outsourcing yourself so you have no purpose anymore in education, but you're doing it in a way where the students can learn from you anytime, anywhere, and they have the advantage of rewinding, pausing, and fast-forwarding, unlike in a live demonstration where you get it once and you get it all at the same time. So Flipped Learning Network is a good one to look at, more of a K-12 site for your reference. The definition of flipped learning, because it's been used by the mass media so much, they had to come up with some sort of an official definition for it. So it is in green here, in the green box. Flipped learning is a pedagogical approach in which direct instruction moves from the group learning space to the individual learning space. And the resulting group space is now transformed into a dynamic, interactive learning environment where the educator guides students as they apply concepts and engage creatively in the subject matter. It's a lot of words. If it's the first time you're seeing that, it's probably a lot. But if I break it down for you, it means the teacher no longer is at the center front of the classroom. The kids are not doing passive learning, they're doing active learning. So if they need to learn something, it's because you've maybe given them some resources to explore. Majority of the class period, they go out and they do their thing, and at the end you come back together and you find out what they learned. Rather than the teacher using maybe a note packet and doing more direct instruction where the students receive the same information the same way all at the same time. So that's in a nutshell what the definition of flipped learning in the K-12 space is about.
I'm going to interrupt Rob here just for a quick second. Sarah, as a special education teacher, and myself, who is teach pathologists by trade, we both work with children with disabilities. And so we're working with students that need have accommodations and modifications. Flipped learning is not having you go above and beyond what you're doing. Students can use these presentations, watch them multiple times, slow down the pace. I see when Rob's speaking here, he's a quick pace talker, like we're New Yorkers, things are fast. So I'm talking about moving that pace to be a little bit slower and having the children really go back and forth looking for key concepts and terms. So you can watch this 10 times and learn something different every single time. Because Sarah and I presented with Rob in Florida, and I'm going through this and I'm going, yeah, I remember this a little bit, but oh yeah, I haven't used that one app in forever, explain everything. I should go back and try to incorporate that in something I'm using. So not only are you making those accommodations without having to put the extra time and effort in, you can have something that's available to students for repeated learning. And as we know, using that multiple modality and repetition creates higher success. We were listening to that keynote, he talked about how we're looking more student-centered versus the big data. This is a way that you're getting that little data, that small personalized instruction with doing the whole group sessions. So.
And how many people right now are thinking the cynical question, this all sounds great, but isn't it a lot more work? Right? That's usually what comes up the first time you're hearing about flipped learning, like this sounds great, but I got to record everything that I say. When am I going to have the time to do that? And this is what I would call front loading. It is a little bit more work, but not as much as you think. It's front-loaded a lot because you'll be pre-recording a lot of your lessons and lectures and so forth. Some instructors record as they go anyways, so it's almost like a DVR yourself type of thing for the first time you do it, and then subsequent classes or periods after that, it's already done. But it is front-loading and is a lot of work up front. I have to admit that. I can't say it's easier to do. But then you have time to not be tied to the front of the room teaching the entire time to the masses. Now you get to float around and work individually one-on-one. And because I'm the one that makes the videos, I know when a kid in my class, for example, says, I'm doing a spreadsheet, how come I can't get the formula that doesn't work? And I say, did you watch the video about putting the equal sign in first? And they go, no, what was that? And I say, oh, it's video 12, go back and check that out. So now I can triage, if you will, when I have 20-some kids in my class, to go watch the video, they watch it 2-3 minutes, okay, now I got it. Or I didn't get it, let me rewind it, watch it again, okay, now I got it, go off and do the work. So it truly is outsourcing yourself to yourself. It's like making digital copies of yourself throughout the room because they all have the ability now to pause, fast forward, and rewind. Not everything's going to be answered in that video, but if you're the one that made the video, as soon as a student asks that question, you'll know, yeah, I didn't talk about that. I should have put that in there. And then next time you teach the lesson, then you remake the video and you put it in there. I see a question in the back.
Yeah, so I'm curious. I work at a college that prepares educators. So it's a two-part question. How are the people coming out of school being prepared to implement this? Are they being taught that? I feel we're not doing a great job of that, preparing the technology side or the tool side and the teachers. Knowing that, how do you get the adoption? Some very problematic adoption. How is that? So how can you tell somebody to go out and do something you're not doing yourself when you are in the education institution?
Yeah, it's.
When do you see the quality or experience of the folks coming in? Are they prepared to do this, or is this like, oh my God, this is not what I was doing?
It's a mixed bag. They're prepared if they experienced this flipped learning as a student, but most at this point have not yet. So it comes down to be how tech savvy are they? Are they media savvy where they understand that watching a video passively is different from watching a video actively and possibly taking notes while you watch a video? And it's really grassroots. I can't say many colleges are teaching this. I could probably say we are at Canisius, that the three of us in our department are all middle school and high school teachers. We're all adjuncts in our program. So all of us are doing this firsthand, and we teach students what it means to make screencasts and flipped learning and whatnot. But you're right, not many colleges are because it's still relatively a 5 to 10 year new trend of screencasting and flipped learning.
In terms of the students coming out of college have more tech savvy than people who've been in the industry a longer time. Now, before we did our educational administrative degree, I had taken no classes online, so I was not familiar with having to put everything up into task stream for our assessments, and then I was often having to go in and make posts on people's contributions that whole point of view. So you have a mixed, like Rob said, a mixed bag, because you have some teachers who've been working in the field 15, 20 years that are lucky if they're just using Word and a couple other things. And then you have other teachers teachers who, Rob talked about Bergman, and he is an older teacher. He's probably been in the field 25, 30 years, but it was his passion that he developed personally and then tried to move it into his career. So I think that it's sort of where you are at your learning ability.
We're not functionally prepared. It's something I'm grappling with. I just want to understand.
Yeah.
But that's exactly right.
The teachers that you have, you don't know it. So how are they teaching the students to do it?
And a good
digital citizen, digital native is the problem.
A good sales pitch, too, to convince someone that flipped learning is worth it, is to have them think, now you can be having one-on-one personal conversations the majority of the time you're with students face-to-face. And it comes down to how are you using your face-to-face time? How can you best use it? And that is not the direct, the lecturing to the masses type thing. So yeah, if you can sell that piece, that's what I find usually helps the reluctant ones to look at it. And then in item D here I have is a couple of published articles over the years. The Journal, Hettinger Report, and eSchool News, mostly K-12 publications, talking about some student screencasting projects where it wasn't me that made the screencast for the kids, but the kids made them for kids, and kids even made them for teachers. We survey our teachers using Google Forms, and we say, what are the top 3 things you want to learn? Is it how to use Gmail better? Is it how to use Google Docs? Is it how to use Evernote? Whatever it is, they tell us, and then I send my students out as little kind of creative movie makers, and they create screencasts, and we vote on the best ones, and then we put them out there to the faculty. So the kids are learning the skill, they're becoming good at something, but then they're turning into a teacher, being able to teach it. And that's all done through the use of screencasting, whether it be on an iPad or through the traditional platforms like the laptop here. I'll show that later.
If you're working in a school setting preparation for education, you know the approaches of Marzano and Zdrojewski, that assessment piece, having that variance of your assessment and being able to teach it out to others. So you're developing a skill at a much earlier time of that reflection piece that schools have not been there for a long time, and you're able to teach it out to somebody else. So you're getting that skill through this programming because you're having to take that turn and have more students that are learning applications.
Feedback in the mic? In the back, do I sound like I'm getting a lot of feedback? Because I can turn this down up here. Yeah. That's number 2. All right, that's a little bit lower. Is that any better? Or now, did I totally cut it off altogether? You're still good? Okay. All right, so the journey I want to take you through now is my story of how I got into the flipped classroom. It all started with this, with jury duty. Being, at the time, 33 years old, never called for jury duty my entire life. I thought I was doing pretty good, but all of a sudden the jury duty summons came. And it wasn't just regular jury duty, it was grand jury duty, which meant a 1-month commitment, 3 to 4 days a week on different days of those weeks. And this happened at the worst possible time in the world of K-12. It was like late April, May. So just kind of at the end of the school year, we're starting a lot of new stuff, and now I'm going to have substitutes in my classroom. So how am I going to get the kids to do, using Evernote, using Google Docs, using Google Drive, doing all the new things they've never done before, trying to write subplans and have a sub-teach it? It's probably not going to happen. So I thought, what if I can use a tool to record myself, to make videos of myself, let the kids watch that so they're still receiving it. And that's kind of good, but that's not 100%, because what happens when the kid says, I don't see the red button you talked about, where's the red button? So there needs to be a two-way street. So combining screencasting, that's me delivering to them, the information coming back, I used an LMS. We use Edmodo in the K-12 world. Has anyone heard of Edmodo before? Okay. Edmodo is kind of the most popular one. It's totally free, so that's why a lot of teachers gravitate to that on a grassroots level. In fact, we use that at Canisius to teach our grad courses. And our college, I hope I don't get in trouble saying this because they're probably going to watch this, our college just adopted, they went away from Angel and Blackboard, now they're using Desire to Learn. Does anybody use Desire to Learn? I don't really like it, and I have no desire to learn it. It's very complex. And in fact, I said, if you won't let me keep using Edmodo the way I have been, I'm just not interested in really teaching anymore. Because I use Edmodo in my K-12 world. I want to use it for teaching the grad school students. Because after all, I'm teaching grad school students that are already teachers or are going to be teachers, so they can use it when they enter the classroom if they haven't already. So using Edmodo as a way to answer those questions and then sending information out through screencasting, that proved to work for about a month and a half period of time to really not lose a lot of productivity time because of the fact I was out of the classroom a lot. Yes?
This can be yes or no, are you following later? Have you figured out how to make somebody on Edmodo a teacher and a student? And if the answer is yes, I can see you remember.
No, I require my grad students to be signed up as students.
So if they're already teachers because they have Edmodo.
I have them make a new account.
Okay.
Yes, that happens all the time. They sign up with it because it gets confusing because as a teacher there's a lot more you can do, and they accidentally reply to an assignment, they post a new assignment, now everybody's got to take the assignment. It gets very confusing. So I mandate them to be students in that Edmodo world. Yes. So I'm going to take you to the website here, which is on the TechSmith site. There's a video I want to show you. They heard of my story, the company TechSmith here located in Michigan, and sent out a camera crew to interview me and my students to capture this as kind of a case study to show what can happen with using their software, of course, when a teacher's out on jury duty. So this is like a 3-minute video. Let's see if I have my audio up. And let's test the Wi-Fi. I'm Rob Zdrojewski. I'm a middle school technology teacher at Amherst Middle School. Right now it's approximately 8:20 in the morning, and in about a half hour the students will be coming into school like a regular routine day.
Mr. Z has been doing jury duty for the past week or so.
And he's been giving us videos through Edmodo to tell us our assignments.
Since he's been gone, we've had a lot of subs, but we still were able to watch the videos, so it's just like he was still in class.
I did it with Snagit. Snagit is a great little tool. I can record whatever's on my screen, including my webcam. So I put it in a little corner of the screen myself. So I think it gives like a human element when you can see the person talking to you and not just hear the voice.
Mr. Z's class is really cool, actually. I love it.
I like how we get to use phones and computers in Mr. Z's class.
We were taught how to use Google Docs on the computer, and we had to create a survey.
Well, at the beginning, we had to use Evernote to find all the items we wanted, and then we implanted all those items and their prices into Google spreadsheet.
I went to Edmodo and I found out Monday's assignments because it said Monday's assignments and the date.
And then using that, we, as you can see here, we made a survey to see what people said would be better.
This is my survey, actually, that I offered everybody, which it's got different questions on it, and right here I'm explaining how you can create all the different questions and stuff like that. So.
Well, in the past, without using screencasting, I come back in the next day looking at those plans and you don't know what you're going to get. In some cases it's, we tried working on this, but we had trouble, so the kids used it as a study hall.
We're using our work time to hand in our assignments and do the assignments that he's given us.
I thought it was really fun. It's much better than writing an essay on it.
Although we still write essays. Haven't eliminated those. I'm Rob Zdrojewski. I'm a teacher, a father, and a juror, and I'm still teaching my students even though I'm out on jury duty, thanks to screencasting. And I still haven't lived it down that I did not say I'm a husband. So her sister, my wife, will not let that one go. So it's funny that TechSmith makes other videos like this and they go places, and the guy, Troy Stein, that records them, he always tells them, make sure you thank your spouse or something, because Rob Z didn't, and he didn't let that one down. So that's my little funny story to go with that. So all in all, you heard a lot of tools in there. Evernote, Edmodo, Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, Snagit. I don't like to say the word technology. I mean, I'm a technology teacher. I'd like to use a different word. I'm a tool teacher. It's all about tools, whether they're hand tools like the other guy that uses saws, hammers, nails, etc., traditional tools, woodworking tools. Those are tools. The tools I use, the tools of my trade, are more electronic tablets, devices like that. They're all just tools. So teaching all these tools to be able to do that, screencasting has, at least for me, been a great way to do that instead of doing live lectures where you have 20 different kids or 20 different learning styles that need it explained sometimes multiple times. So screencasting has really been a lifesaving for me. So then after jury duty was over with, I realized I'm not going to stop making videos. I'm going to keep doing that. Even though I'm here, I'm still going to record a 5-minute video on how to use the translate feature in Google Docs and make that be the way the kids learn that, rather than me do a live demo. Because now they can watch that video outside of class before they get to me, or I can send them when I'm working with another kid and go watch that video, come to me if you got questions. So you kind of outsource yourself to yourself in that way. So making videos tends to be a great way to enable a flipped classroom approach. So let's close that tab and take us back to full screen. And moving on. A lot of this now comes down to your classroom design. I've been teaching for 14 years. I started in 2001. I have never taught in a classroom that looks like this. I've been in many of them, both at higher ed and K-12 world, but does anyone know the real advantage to a classroom that's set up like that? I've heard things like that before, yeah. I'll give you a hint. It has to do with what happens after when all the kids and teachers are gone. There you go. It's easier to get the broom between the rows as you go up and down. Someone told that to me, I thought, you know what, that kind of does make sense. That's what it's set up for that way. If you have a classroom that looks like that, it really looks no different. Many of us maybe have seen this. This is from Wikipedia. That looks like this from many years ago, where everyone's sitting in a straight row, the teacher being the sole center focus of that. And that worked in the world of the 20th century when the teacher was the source of information. Because of their degree and their knowledge, they were imparting that knowledge on everybody else in the audience that didn't have that knowledge. Now you can take your phone and say, what's the tallest building in the world? And 3 seconds later, Siri will tell you. Or I call it Mrs. Google if you're using the Google search app. So when information is plentiful now in the 21st century, this model really doesn't work too well. So on the next slide here, you're seeing this is a shot I took of my actual classroom. I can proudly say I've built these tables. So these are 12-foot long, kind of like countertop material you'd find in a kitchen. So we have 3 basic tables. I usually have teams of 2 or 3 working on projects together. But around the perimeter is where we have the desktop computers. And fortunately, as of this year, we now have 20 iPad minis to use as well. So we've gone mobile, we have traditional platform, and we have the center area to meet and do that no technology in your hands, face-to-face kind of talk that happens in the very beginning and the very end of my class every period. So that's a shot of what it looks like there. We already looked at this, but I just want to reiterate it again. The key piece here being the direct instruction moves from the group learning to the individual learning space. Doesn't say anything about direct instruction goes away or lecturing is bad. And a lot of times when someone is new to flipped learning, that's kind of the cynical approach, is you're saying, well, I've been doing that for years, it works well, I know my stuff, kids really say at the end of my evaluations they like it, but we're not saying get rid of that. We're just saying use that time only when there's no other way to do it than direct instruction. And for me, in my particular case, it's always when I introduce a new project. I like to get that excitement so they can see how excited I am to show them this new Word of the Week project where we're going to take a vocabulary word and break it down and how exciting it is. But if I did that in a video, they'd be like, oh, we're just taking a word and putting a definition. You know, that's not cool. So direct instruction, at least in the world of middle school for me, is where I can get that energy out there where they can really get excited about something. So I try to figure out if I got something new I'm introducing to the audience, do I have to do it in a direct instruction fashion, or could I make a video that then has the advantages of being playable again and playable outside of the class? So 3 questions that we always consider in flipped learning. Who's in the driver's seat? Are the students doing passive or active learning? And again, that's a John Bergman thing. What's the best use of my face-to-face time? On the left, in this case, maybe she's introducing something new. That makes sense to be in that mode. But if she's doing that for 40 minutes out of a 45-minute class period, it's just going to eventually get old. And the students are going to learn to just tune out mentally. They might have their eyes open, look like they're paying attention, maybe writing down notes. But the moment they have to regurgitate that information, it becomes a challenge. Whereas on the right, we have that active learning model, where students are taking maybe a 5-minute lecture, using the majority of the class to do something with it, create something, and at the end share that out. And at that time, that's when the teacher uses his or her expertise to clarify those misconceptions. Because maybe all period long, those kids thought they had the idea of building the strongest engineered structure, but at the end they realized that wasn't the goal here. So they went down the wrong path. Yes, they're right, but they weren't doing the task at hand. And that happens all the time at the middle school level. Kids think that they've got it. They're sold on it. They think they know what they know. But then at the end it's like, oh, okay, well, we were doing something else. And that's one of those uncomfortable moments as a teacher. You have to feel like we didn't just waste the class period. It was productive, but they learn that you have to really look at the specifications in the beginning to make sure at the end you get what you need. And I think that really mimics the real world very, very closely, especially when you're working on projects. So this now is a picture of myself and Elaine and Sarah. So if we're ready, let's jump into some case studies where I'm going to go through, I'll show you here 7 different examples of how to do this. And I proudly made that. I probably spent way too much time on that, but notice they're jumping in and they even have the iPads in their hands there. So let's close out of that slide and take us into it. So what I've done here is I've hooked up my iPad through a little Blackmagic intensity box, which is like a little $300 box. You can hook up anything to it, any video source, whether it's HDMI, S-video, composite video, anything, and it brings it into your MacBook, which is kind of nice because that gives you a lot of flexibility. Because of that, I have it on my screen here. That means this is going to be part of the recording that you could potentially watch later on. So you'll see me switch back and forth. It'll just fade from this to that, and we'll go back and forth. So let's take an overview now of those 7 case studies, starting with the most simplest, basic handwriting on a whiteboard. Just using your voice to narrate, nothing fancy, like a recordable whiteboard. We're going to use ScreenChomp for that. Then we're going to take an image that we get online. In this case, it's science example, where I'm going to use the bone structure of a hand and teach a lesson. Third one, we're going to do some ELA work, sorting words, some random words up there, deciding between whether they are nouns, verbs, or adjectives. And then we'll take a little break there, give some time for individual questions too. Then we'll come back with the more intermediate stuff, which is presenting PowerPoint slides. And I would think at the higher ed level, this would be one of those highly requested topics, because we all make PowerPoint or slideshow type presentations. Now let's turn them into a narrated video that we could watch, and going one step further, the one below it, number 5, doing that by putting a picture-in-picture live camera of yourself in the corner somewhere. So you give that personal touch to it. Number 6 is how to use the live web browser feature. So if there's something you want to show that's in a web browser, you can do that using a feature of Explain Everything. And lastly, a physical therapy example, or kind of a kinesiology, if you will, of how to analyze something, in this case, some movement, do a side-by-side comparison of telestration. And a good example of that is if you think of Buffalo Sabres, we watch a lot, so I always say this when I'm teaching Buffalo, but when they show the puck going in the net in real slow motion, and they show frame by frame, and they're talking over it, and they're drawing with lines and arrows, that's a good example of what telestration is. So we have that technology now to do that in an app called Coach's Eye, and there are others, but that's my preference there. I'll show you how to do that on any iOS device, or Android, or Windows device too, because it's actually a cross-platform app. So, before I begin the case studies, which is really the heart and soul of this presentation, is there any initial questions that anybody has right off the bat? Alright, so let's jump right into the first one. Basic handwriting on the whiteboard. We're going to do a math demonstration. The simplest of them all, and I'll show you my ones I'm going to talk about today. These are the screencasting apps. I'm going to start with ScreenChomp. ScreenChomp is made by TechSmith. That's a company you'll hear me reference a lot today. And they've been around the block for, I think, at least 30 years or so. They've been doing screencasting products for forever. Snagit and Camtasia were their bread and butter, but now they're branching off into the world of iOS. So this app is pretty basic. I use my laser pointer here to show you an interface. Up in the top is anything you've recorded in the past is stored up there. So I did an example just the other day, and if I touch that, it'll play it. And there's no logins needed. That's another reason why I like this. No logins for you, the creator, or for the students watching. You just hand the iPad to a kid and say, make a screencast. It's kind of a nice thing not to have to deal with those passwords and things. Now, if I want to do audio, I guess I have to plug in a little differently here. And it's on the top or bottom. Well, I'm going to make one anyway. So just to show you, there's. All right, I'll make a real one anyways. Just to show you, that's a video. That's a finished product. It's kind of like a cooking show. I'm showing you the end before I show you the recipe to put it together. But all the ones you've recorded in the past are stored right up there. So that's your shortcut to get to them. Now on the bottom we have over here we can add things to the screen, such as images, which I'll be doing when I do the science example. To the right of that we have the erase button. You just hold it down and you can see the. Put something on the screen here so I could show you. Hold that down and it erases whatever's on the screen. You have 3 different markers. Tap them and you get to choose between fine, medium, and a thick point, and different colors here. And then at the end, of course, is your eraser, and then the big red record button. And that's really it. It's a very basic app on purpose so that someone just jumping into this doesn't feel intimidated by all the bells and whistles. So for my example here, we're going to do an algebra example. And before I hit the record button, I want to actually set the stage up here a little bit. I'm going to change this one to a black marker. And we're going to do an algebra example. This could be, imagine I was a student doing this for homework and then posting it on the LMS so other students could watch this at their leisure. Also, it could be that student that won the prize because they did the best homework or they did the best something in class, and now they get the privilege of making the screencast on the teacher's iPad in those one iPad classrooms. So we're going to solve for X here the way that I've learned it, because now with Common Core Math I know it's a lot different. Yes? This one is, yes. Some of the other ones I'll show you are also available on Android and even Windows tablet now, but the majority of them happen to be on iOS first before they port them to other platforms. All right, so I've set the stage. I'm now going to solve it, and I'll put on my teacher voice here, make sure I didn't miss anything. We get our countdown, and here we go. Well, hello boys and girls. If you remember, we talked about solving for X in class today. Our goal is to get this X right here all by itself, which means we have to get rid of the things that are around it. So using my 2 fingers, let's put it back up there again. And we have 3x plus 2 equals 11. All right, so if you remember, the first thing we need to do now is get rid of stuff that's on its own. And what I mean by that is this +2 is kind of hanging out there on its own. So if we do the opposite of that, we have to do the same thing to the other side, which now takes us to carry this right here, carry it down. So we have our 3x. This now is gone. It's eliminated because a +2 and a -2 cancels itself out. Carry down what we have, 11 minus 2 is 9. So that's what we're left with next. Now the goal here is to get this x to be by itself, and as this case shows us, it's 3 multiplied by x. So if we do the opposite of multiplication, which is division, again, do the same on the other side, and now we have, boom, that's gone, x is by itself, and it equals whatever 9 divided by 3 is. And if you can do that math in your head, you got it. The answer is x equals 3. So I hope that made sense. If not, let me know the questions on Edmodo. Thanks. All right, so there's a quick impromptu minute-and-a-half screencast that I made. I believe it might play if I hit play here. Sometimes you have to upload it first or title it first. That might be the case here. So if we title it and call this our Algebra 23, just for fun. And then we hit the share button. What it's doing now is it's uploading it to the cloud. This is cloud-based storage, free, no limit on how many or how long you make these. And I've challenged that, and I've never seen that there was a issue with it, unless you're not on Wi-Fi, which might be the case here. Because I'm on the conference Wi-Fi, it's not very reliable. I'd probably have to log back in again. But basically, it would upload, and there would be a second one up here that says ScreenChomp with the date and time on it. You would tap that, and it would be ready to go. Now, the way that you get that to your audience members is by using the share button at the bottom. By hitting share, notice we have 3 options. We can copy the link, which is a direct URL link, a website link that we can paste in our LMS, send out an email, however we decide to distribute that. We can email it directly, which is kind of a nice feature, because you hit email link, and it brings up a nice familiar-looking screen here where you're going to write an email, put in your recipients, and there's already a link ready to go, so you can just send that out directly. Taking that one step further, I helped my second grade, my daughter's in 2nd grade, I helped that teacher set up a blog so that all you had to do was email in posts to your blog or blog. And so it was just a special email address she sent it to, and then just by sending that email to that special address, it appeared on the blog. And therefore, an alert went out to all the parents that were subscribed to the blog that something new was posted. So it was a very seamless way to get new content out there by sending it out through email links. So that was kind of a neat little workflow that we came up with to make it easy for her to do that. So that was our first example. And again, the benefits are no accounts are needed whatsoever. I can't stress that enough because especially in the world of K-12, you don't want to hit that roadblock of, well, what's my password? What's my username? Where does the @ symbol go? Is it uppercase? All that kind of stuff. So it's nice to avoid that. Yes? It'll play in a browser because we can, now again, I have to make sure my Wi-Fi is adequate here. But if I go down to, there it is, open in Safari. If you open it in Safari, it'll open up the Safari browser and it will reveal to you, I believe, the URL. Maybe not at the top because it still says ScreenChomp. But I can just email it to myself instead. Let's go back to that. Go back to here. Copy link. There we go. I would copy the link. Link is now copied to the clipboard. Now I could go to Safari, paste it up at the top. There it is. So the link looks like that. screenchomp.com/ a bunch of random things there. And they are unlimited in quality and length, so you can make them any length that you want. If you go beyond 5 minutes of a recording, though, it does take a long time to publish, sometimes painfully slow where you can't get on to making the next video. So I try to keep all my screencasts as a general rule under 3 minutes, if possible. If it's a longer task, I just chunk it into smaller bits of information. So there's many 3-minute videos rather than one 20-minute long video, something like that. All right, so workflow number 1 is done. Basic handwriting on a whiteboard. Now on to number 2, annotating an image. We're still going to use ScreenChomp for this one, but my goal here is to take the bone structure in the hand and talk about, I'm not a science teacher either, but it's about the intermediate, proximal, and distal areas of the bones. Because as my wife, who's a physical therapist, knows, many different parts of the body where there's bone structure, those key vocabulary words mean the same thing. So like near, middle, and far here is the same as your leg, is the same as your neck. There's many terms like that. So let's say that was the task at hand that myself or another student had to teach somebody else. So we'll make a screencast for that. We're going to go out to the web, though, and grab an image that we want to use. And I was in the middle of doing this before, so let's take it back a step. Let's say we go to the browser of your choice. In this case, I actually have the Google search browser, and I typed in hand structure bones, and then do a Google image search. And one that I like is, I like this one right here. So all I have to do is touch and hold, save image, and it now saves to the camera roll. That same procedure works if you're using Safari as a browser, if you're using Chrome as your browser. All of them touching and holding, and saves it to the camera roll. Now we're going to go back into ScreenChomp again, take us to a blank white canvas, and we're going to pull up that image by using the bottom left-hand corner feature here, this little insert button. And we will choose from our library, which takes us to the camera roll with all of our photos there, and we choose that one that we selected. Now I only want to see really this part of it. I don't care about all of that. So notice I can move, zoom, or rotate. I'm actually going to just move it over so it appears like so. And then I'll hit done. It pulls it on the screen. Using 2 fingers now I can scroll up and down. Kind of like the old-fashioned, well, I shouldn't say old-fashioned, some people might still use them. The overhead projector that had the one reel of the clear plastic and you reel one, you just kind of move it over. Same idea here. It's just in a digital sense where you can write stuff and then move it up when you're done writing it. So in this case, I'm going to talk about the vocabulary words of distal, intermediate, and proximal. That's the goal of what I want to do here. And since these are already color-coded, I'm going to make the first one red. I'm going to make the second one blue already, and the third one is green. So I can kind of color-code as I talk. All right, so let's hit our record button using our teacher voice. Hello, boys and girls. In our health class today, we talked about the different bone structures all throughout the body. Now, if you remember the term distal, I remember distal as in distant, meaning these little pieces of bone right here are distant from the rest of your body. They're all the way on the tips of your fingers. So distal means distant. Kind of remember that when we talk about that for other bone structures. Next up, we have the intermediate. Intermediate meaning in the middle. And when we talk about the middle, represented here where I'm circling, those are the bone structure that are in between. And lastly, the word proximal. Proximal meaning in proximity to, or near, or close to. And those are the 3 different types of bone structures that exist in many parts besides just the hand. So you'll see that as we look at other parts of the body later on. That's the screencast for today. Thank you for watching. Now I made that up, so if anybody's a science teacher, I totally hope I didn't blow it, but that's the idea. And then, yeah, sometimes you can't play it back until you, it's funny, it's a little tricky like that, until you give it a name. So we'll call it hands. Correct. Yes. The phone could ring, and if it didn't bother me, I would leave it in. The dog could bark in the background. The dishwasher's running because I'm at the kitchen table. That all happens. And I've gotten to the point where I'm not a perfectionist where I have to stop and redo it over again because you would just never get done. Because like John Bergman says, do you need it to be perfect or do you need it Tuesday? You know, like how important is it that you just get it done so you can move on with the rest of what you got to do? So I think it's a generational thing. Anyone that's our age or older, it kind of thinks that, well, if you're making a video, like making a TV program, it's got to be perfect. You can't have something subpar out there. But the generation below us that's coming up, the YouTube generation, they see all sorts of stuff that's amateur quality, and that's acceptable to their world. So it is really a generational thing that we think differently than a lot of our students where it has to be perfect, because if it's not, they're going to judge me. And it's not really the case. They like to see that the cat walked in the background of the video. They like to see things like that because it makes you seem like more of a person. So just a little heads up on that. I'm glad you reminded that you don't have to be that perfectionist. And I had one kid, I remember he sat in the corner of the room there. 4 or 5 days went by in a row where I didn't realize that he was making the same screencast. I thought he was moving on and making other screencasts. It was the same one. He was not happy with how it sounded because someone across the room squeaked their chair and he heard that, so he had to cancel it and start over again.
It was the same for one of our classes for our administration. Bob did this section, and I had to branch my section after his. We're talking about Charlotte Anderson. I have a training in my house.
Oh, that's right.
I would record it again.
Yep.
You know, something else happened. I had to record it. He said, but you're not going to hand that part in. He said, no, because I want it to be perfect. It's first grade. I want a perfect day. But like Rob said, you know, this is not something that's fixed. So you know, the content changes over years. You can take this section out that Rob just did and put something new and say, oh, they're changing the bones now. So this is what's going to happen. That's right. The front-loading information, yeah, it's a lot of work ahead of time. As you become more comfortable with it, you can see that Rob just can pull this out of thin air and create whatever he wants in a snapshot. Where it might take, for somebody who hasn't used it very often, a little bit more time. And you can sub in the videos and change things up. It's not that once you create it once, you don't have to teach again. You just can use the things over and over and over. You know, it's like anything else out there. You want to make sure you're updating information as time goes along.
Let me, and I work with student workers on campus. I cannot stress this enough. Don't make them longer than 2.5 minutes.
Right.
They won't watch it.
Right. And you have to teach them how to watch these too. It sounds funny to teach a grown person, this is how you watch something, but it's different from watching it passively. You might have to take notes. You might have to think, what are the key points? So I have to show my kids, this is how they say, oh, we watch YouTube videos all the time. Well, this is a different kind of online video. You need to watch this actively, not passively. And that's easy for new flippers, new teachers that are flipping, to just forget. But you actually have to teach them how to watch. Yes? No, what you're seeing up there is the timestamp of when it was created, I believe. Oh, yeah, when you're looking at it, yep. This one is published, I believe. It might say it at the bottom. If not, it'll say it in the browser. Within the app, I'm not sure if it does. Yeah, there's the time code. So 52 seconds. So they know, based on the progress bar in here, where they're at. In fact, on the web, I think this even goes different speeds. So you could go twice the speed or half the speed, which is kind of funny to hear yourself talking as a chipmunk, but sometimes you can digest that information quick enough if the person is a natural slow talker that you can speed it up. That's a feature on all YouTube videos, and now a lot of the platforms for screencasting are starting to do that as well. I listen to podcasts all the time. In fact, on the plane right here I was listening, I listen at 1.5 speed because now a 10-minute podcast is not 10 minutes to listen to. It's whatever that math would be, about 8 minutes or so. So you shave off some time that way if you can interpret the information quicker. And every person's different, so some people can do it and some can't. So that's that will help too for those screencasts that you made that are 5 minutes, but a kid only wants to watch it in 3 minutes. If they can understand with less space between your words as you're speaking, it may still work. Now the audio wasn't up there, so. Not so much the loading time, because of attention time. More so for the age group I work with, 7th and 8th graders. There was a formula once that John recommended. I think it was no more than 1.5 minutes per age. So if they're 10 years old, no more than a 15-minute total video. But I think that's still even kind of long.
For my current work, all the videos that you're watching in the like the health precautions, and making sure that you're using universal precautions, all the health-related workplace bullying, sexual harassment, all those videos are now on something like this. And when you're watching it for a long time, how many people press start?
Yeah.
Other things that the work does, they check that, look at, film what's done, okay, and go back and forth.
Yep.
You just want to take those key points initially so that when you're actually face-to-face in the classroom, those can be expounded upon, for example.
Right, and you're not, everything in the video is not everything they need to know. It's just the highlights so that they're prepped before class to arrive to your room and have a face-to-face conversation or a group conversation. So think of it that way too. You don't feel pressured that every single thing they need to know needs to be included in that video, because you'll make an outline that's so huge that it'll be impossible to make brief videos. Another thing that she reminded me of earlier was, because you might remake your videos, never say in the beginning, hello everybody, welcome to video number 3, where we talk about blah blah blah. Because next time you teach this, it might not be video 3. And never say, because I did this, welcome fall 2012 students, in our semester this fall we're going to blah blah blah. Because now I can't use that in the spring because I said the word fall in there. So to help not obsolete your own videos, don't say numbers, don't say things like that. They're like fall and spring. What instead you can do is say, when I click on this group, and you're highlighting it, when I click on this group of your class, I'll say things generically like that. So they see, oh yeah, it says spring 2012, but I'm in fall 2014. So we say, and when you click on your name over here, just talk very generically. That saved me a lot too. That was a tip that John passed down that I think helps you to not have to re-record your videos then, if you keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to move on now to the next workflow, number 3, which is a new app. This one is called EDUcreations. And first I shall explain the goal. Now this one is a little step up. It's also a free app. It does require you to create an account in order to share things out, which is not a big deal, but it's just one of those potential roadblocks that could happen in a classroom situation. You got to do the legwork in advance and create your accounts to be able to share things. It has a couple extra features that the last one didn't have, so I'll be highlighting those as we go through it. But my goal here is to do a random word sort, and we're going to make kind of a three-column T-chart here between nouns, verbs, and adjectives. So let's set up the stage here. As you can see, our color palette. Touch and hold it again, and you get to pick more colors. So in this case, I want to have nouns, verbs, adjectives. I think I made one extra column, but that's okay. And now instead of me doing this, look at, all right, nouns, that kind of looks horrible, right? You could say that, it won't hurt my feelings. Let's undo that, one letter at a time. I can use this feature, which the other one did not have, which is the text feature. So now someone like me that doesn't have really good handwriting, even if I try, I can type it here, I can change the color, I can go smaller and bigger, but you can't change the font, can't do that. So let's put that in here. Our nouns is going to be there. Let's make the next one verbs. And we got to hit done, and then you can move it. And we'll do adjectives. I was thinking of putting in something else there, but I'll just leave it as that. Now I'm going to put my words off to the left-hand side. Let's make those. This again is a random. I do this activity with some students. I know a lot of our ELA teachers do too. Just random words out there that they may or may not know what they mean, and they have to put them in the correct column. And then they have to put an image to go along with it, and then they have to explain why they chose that image. So if you did this on construction paper, you could get the image probably, right? They cut it out of magazines. You get them to handwrite the words in the right columns, but what you just can't get is their voices explaining why they chose that. Because you might think, why did they put that image for that? But if you hear their explanation, you're like, oh, okay, I see why they were thinking that. So this medium of video allows for things that you just can't do in a traditional paper-based way. So let's put in our random words here. We'll make them black. And our first one's going to be, let me see, what was I going to use? Shoes. And then you have to hit that again to put, oops, see, I don't want to go in that column there. This is a common mistake. You can't just hit enter and put in a list. You got to say done. And now that one is floating around and done over here off to the side. Kind of our word bank. Next word we'll put in is wink. Done. Next word, tap that there, is going to be moist. Done. And then the last word is, this is a ringer here. I'm not sure how many know this. All right, so 4 words there. Now I set up the stage. I'm now going to hit the record button and pretend that I'm a student doing this for my teacher. Okay, so let's make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so here we go. Well, hello, Mrs. Jones. This is Rob Z in your 3rd period class, and I'm going to show you where I think these things will go. So shoes, they are a person, place, or thing, so that would be a noun, I think. Wink is something that you do, so that's like an action, and I think that's going to be a verb. Moist is like a description word. It's like says something about something, so I'm going to say that's an adjective because they describe things. And then vestibule, from what I looked up, is like a place. So places would also be considered nouns. So I'm going to put those there. And now I'll put in some pictures. Now, what I just did is I tapped, notice it paused, I tapped onto that button right there, where now I can insert any one of these items. This is a feature that doesn't exist on the last app that I showed you, which I really like. It's going to the web. So because we don't want this to be part of the recording, EDUcreations automatically, that's why the red bar is up there, it paused the recording for me, which is great because your viewers would really appreciate that. They don't want to see you searching for a picture of shoes, that could be done in the background. So I'm going to go to the web, and this is a safe web search. If you put in something inappropriate here, most likely, 9 times out of 10, it will not show up, which is a good thing because it obviously for the K-12 world we want it to be. So if I say I'm looking for shoes, this would be like the equivalent of doing a Google image search, but it's right in that app. You're not having to go outside the app and do an extra step like we did with the bone structure thing. So let's say I'll get a pair of shoes. I touch that, it puts it in. Using my 2 fingers now, I can pinch and zoom and I can rotate. So I'll put that in there. And while I'm paused, I'll just do all of them here then. I'll do the same thing. Go to the web. And moist. Well, I think of like a moist cake that you're eating. So that's going to be part of my explanation. So let's look for the word cake. See something that comes up. I'll say, sure, that one is good. And you might be thinking, well, are we copyright infringement here? Does fair use play into this? In the world of K-12, the advice that I can give, and again, I'm not a lawyer, is because we're doing this purely for educational purposes, we're not selling this, we're not putting it out on a training disc or anything like that, and we can claim fair use for this for legal purposes. Could someone sue us? Yes, that's not out of the realm of possibility, but the likelihood of them winning on that lawsuit would be very small. So it's a use as you find careful. I put wink in there on purpose because watch this. Instead of going to the web, now I'm going to use the camera feature because I want a picture, like all kids do, of themselves in there. So that's the front-facing camera. Here's the back-facing. Here's the front-facing. So I want to do wink, so let's see if I can do this. Okay. So I use photo. And kids love to put themselves in there, so I'm going to say that's wink. And then this one's tricky. We're going to do vestibule. And when we search that, we're going to get some, vestibule is like an extension to something else, so it's like the added part onto that tent, or the added room added to that floor plan. So I'll pick that floor plan, and I need to make a little annotation so somebody knows. So I will take a little arrow, and I'll say like this is it right here. So now I'm ready to hit record again. Okay, so Mrs. Jones, you can see I put 4 pictures in there. I thought shoes was good because everybody knows what shoes look like. And I put a picture of myself for wink. And then I think a cake is something that you eat that's very moist, so I put a cake in there. And then a vestibule, that was a tricky one I had trouble with, is like that added part on at the end there. So I hope that makes sense for you, and I hope you enjoy watching this. All right, so I hit pause up there. That is a total of 56 seconds. So if you have, I have 172 students usually on my roster at any given time. So in my case, this might be tough to spend 56 seconds on all 172 of them kids. But maybe if I'm an elementary school teacher and I have just 25 kids or something, this might be more manageable to capture their mindset of how they reason things out in the form of a video. We hit done. We have to hit save lesson because if we don't, it will truly be scrapped over again. We can give it a title. We'll call this our word sort for Monday. Description is optional. You can leave it blank. Now you get a choice of how this goes. The reason why this exists is there is a website called educreations.com. So if anyone in the world goes there and you make your video public, that means anyone can watch it. So use that with care. Make sure there's no sensitive information or pictures of students maybe perhaps that might be sensitive. If it's, in my case, I really don't care if anyone sees this. It's okay if everyone does see it. I'll mark it as public so there will not be any requirement of logging in to see it. But if you had requirements, these are younger kids, maybe they put their own images in, then yes, make it a private or semi-private video where the kids and the parents would have to log in to see it. And that's explained more on the EduCreations website. I see a couple of questions. Let's go here first. I don't know the exact answer to that. I'm assuming it's a Google image search because I've tried doing the same thing and the same results come up basically. So I think it's a strict search, strict filtered search on Google. I'm guessing the app manufacturer was able to use that technology. But I can't say that for 100% certainty. But it is pretty good. Usually, whatever you type in, something does come up. Rarely do you get no results. Any question back there?
I'm trying to figure out can you send them the noun-verb adjective with the word template, and then they pull it in, or do you have to just tell them, okay, open up your EduCreations app, that's what I need to do?
If you're using the EduCreations app, there's no way to send them a template set up in advance. What I might suggest is that you set it up on your own and then hand the iPad to the child, or you make a screencast on how to set up the stage, so that's part of their task is to set up the stage. But if you really are intent on wanting to give them a template,
Well, I'm thinking about a one-to-one situation where
okay.
An iPad.
Then one of the next steps I'm showing, which is explain everything, you'd be able to send them a project file and explain everything that is essentially your template you want, where then they fill it in. But this particular app, you can't do that. So each one of them has its own pros and cons, I guess you could say. Now you could categorize this just so that it makes it easier for people on the educreations.com website to find your stuff. I'll just leave it as language arts because that makes sense. And I am logged into the app already. That's why it didn't require me to log in at that point. So in now a matter of probably 5 or 10 minutes or so, we could go on educreations.com and we could search for the language arts category. And probably, if you even search by keywords, word sort, you may be led to that video. So that's a way of discovery to happen, where other people can find your stuff that you've made, because maybe they have a word sort they want to do, and they want to see what other people have done. So it's a way for discovery up on that website. But if you want to share it out now, if you see in the upper right-hand corner is that familiar share-looking button, When you tap onto that, notice each of the projects you made now has 4 possible options. Facebook and Twitter, send it out through email, and grab the direct link to it. So I think that gives you the most flexibility to use it however you decide. But do note, this app and the last app that I showed you, they do not save to the camera roll whatsoever. It is proprietary, meaning it's only within their specific platform. If you want that source file, you can't get it. Right? Well, you can, but it's very obscure to do that. The reason why I'm mentioning that now is after the break here, the next one we're going to look at, Explain Everything, is a paid app, but that's one of the #1 advantages to it, is that you can save your recording directly to your camera roll on your device. Once it's on that camera roll, you could do anything you want with it. Bring it into iMovie to maybe add some music. You could throw it up on YouTube. You have many different things you could do when stuff is in that camera roll. Okay. So let me make sure I didn't miss anything with that. Okay, so that was that. It looks like mostly everybody's back. My mic is still on. We're still good in the back. Everybody can hear?
Questions on ScreenChomp or EdUcreations?
The first 2, ScreenChomp or EDUcreations, the basics. Yeah, if you want to, I want to reserve some time towards the end so you guys get a chance to make stuff while we're here to support you on it, or you experiment with it. That's how it sticks. That's right. You learn something when you try it. That's right. All right, so we're going to go to a little bit more of the heavy lifting things with Explain Everything. I like Explain Everything. It's a $3 app, which in the world of apps, some people say is expensive, but really for $3, and it's actually half price if you buy 20 copies or more as part of the volume pricing program that Apple has. It lets you save your stuff to your camera roll. That's the biggest thing. Plus it has a lot of import and export capabilities. You could pull in content from your Google Drive, from your Evernote, from your Dropbox, from your all sorts of obscure ones I've never even heard of, all cloud-based storage. So stuff can get in and stuff can get out very easily. So that's why it's probably a paid app, and it is what we would call the kind of the industry standard when it comes to screencasting on an iOS device. So they've been around for a while and they keep evolving that app better. So numbers 4, 5, and 6 we're going to look at all using that. 4 we'll start with now, presenting PowerPoint slides. It's probably what the students are using iPads owned by the school, so therefore the school district buys it. And because we buy 20 or more copies, it's $1.50 per copy. But many students bring their own, and some schools have BYOD, they bring in their own tech. So I don't like running that line because I tell a kid, you have to buy this app to do what we're all doing. I kind of, that can be a touchy situation. But in many cases, parents are okay with that if they understand why it's something that they should spend their money on. So I'm kind of careful with that line. So something I'm sure we've all done, presenting PowerPoint slides. Me personally is kind of a political speech here. I'm an anti-Microsoft kind of person. I want Microsoft out of my life completely, including Bill Gates with all of his money and pushing Common Core down to K-12, but that's the whole political side of things. So what I prefer is using the world of Google for everything. So just like you saw me using this tool, Google Slides, instead of PowerPoint, looks like PowerPoint, it allows you to do basically the same things, but it's all cloud-based. So I don't have to worry about a flash drive getting lost where I stored this, or having multiple copies emailed to myself, and which one's the latest version and which one's not. It's all stored online and it's accessed online. So there's advantages to that, to the world of Google Docs. How many people live in that world of Google Docs and Google Drive? Okay, how many people live in the Microsoft Office world? All right, so I'll try to convince you to convert, or at least consider converting, because I think there's so many more advantages to a tool that's free. Free is a opportune word because they make money by advertising, but free works better compared to something that's not free that you pay for. So it's something to consider. But anyways, the point what I'm trying to make here is we take any PowerPoint that you've created, or Google Slides, in my case it'll be a Google Slide, and I'm going to go to my Google Drive and grab the one I had to use for this example, my mobile learning project. I narrowed this one down because it was like 50 slides and I didn't want to bore you with all that. So I narrowed it down to 3 slides. Let's pretend we want to present these 3 slides in screencasting fashion so that my voice can be heard, so I can provide this to someone as a video that they can watch, instead of just a slide deck of images that they have to look at and interpret themselves. Because after all, if you looked at this, you may be thinking, okay, he's shown a bunch of items here, he's got this, but why is he really showing this? What's the purpose of this? You just can't tell by looking at that. But by hearing me explain highlighted pieces of this, then it may make sense. So this is when Elaine and I were going through the Canisius program. The professors would have us create over and over again, create a PowerPoint, create a PowerPoint, create a PowerPoint, and then hand in the PowerPoint deck for your classmates to look at. And I'd be so frustrated at that because I think the purpose of a slideshow is to be presented. This is the tool. This is just the medium, but it has to be presented. And if you're in an online program, you can't do it face-to-face. You got to get your voice captured somehow. So I used Explain Everything in this particular one, which I said was about 50 slides, and I recorded my narration on each slide individually. And in the end, the students that looked at my stuff could just watch a video, which they said that they liked better, rather than clicking next, next, next on a bunch of images and trying to decipher why I built the slides the way that I did. So just something to consider as we move into it.
It's such a comprehension, because as you all know, we're at the college level, some people just read their PowerPoint. Okay, well, I can read what you wrote in the PowerPoint. I want to know what you got from those talking points. You know, once again, that whole group of people is challenging. Rob was in the group, I was in the same group with another person. We both talked about the slides, what's happening, not just reading the screen. And then the other person literally said, create a mobile learning device subcommittee. And the feedback we got from the teacher, because she screencasted back to us, said, you know, Rob, I like that you did this, this, and this, you know, Lane, this is a great point. And then so-and-so, I didn't really know if you understood what was happening in your presentation because you just read the screen. So then we were able, as a group, to go back and make modifications and help her with some suggestions. So I think that's important to have that component so you can explain those pieces.
Yep, and one of the rules I have my students follow is you cannot say what's on the slide. That's for the audience to see. Don't tell them what they already can see themselves. Interpret what it says. So I will not accept, when they turn in an assignment that has slideshows where the slides were explained because they read what was on the slide. I won't take it. I'll hand it back to them. It's part of being in a flipped mastery classroom. You give them the tools. Now they have to be, I don't want to say perfect, but they have to do a very decent job. And if it's subpar quality, you hand it back digitally and say, fix it, hand it back in again digitally. And that back and forth digitally is much easier than doing the old-fashioned paper trail of grading papers. So I didn't mention that in the beginning, but a flipped mastery classroom means everybody's using the flipped style, but we're not all working on the same projects at any given time. She's working on the Word of the Week project. He's doing the audio podcasting project, and they're doing that the same day in class. So that seems like a lot of chaos, but it works if you have the tools like Screencasting to deliver your direct instruction, and you have Edmodo to capture the questions they have coming back when they're not with you face-to-face. They can ask those questions. And so a flipped mastery classroom is kind of like the holy grail of flipped teaching and flipped learning. Get to the point where not everybody has to do the same thing because it's Tuesday and we're ready to do this unit. Instead, you work at your own pace throughout, meeting the benchmarks, but still making sure that it's of a high quality. And that's the teacher. The teacher is that gatekeeper, making sure it's high quality. If a kid just skates through it real quick, no, go back and try it again. Maybe this time do it differently. Right? Do it as an audio podcast instead of as a 5-page essay. You know, the tools allow you to do that. It seems like a lot of work at first, but I've been being in the flipped mastery classroom for probably about 7 years now, 5 to 7 years. So now it seems like it's no big deal to me. But when I first started out, it was intimidating, having different projects going on at the same time. But again, it all comes down to the tools, your comfort level with them, and just trusting the fact that the kids, as long as they meet the benchmarks, you kind of don't care what they do in the intermediate steps to get there. I shouldn't say don't care. I should say you realize that everyone has different strengths, and some people are writers, some are singers, some are sketchers. They do what they can do to prove that they've learned something. So back to my goal here. I'm going to switch to the iPad and show you. The app we're using now is called Explain Everything. It's the top middle one. And when I launch it, this is the screen where you normally would create a brand new one. If I hit plus up there, and you choose a template, you have the familiar whiteboard approach to draw on. I need to get my slides into here. A couple ways to do it. Probably at least 4 or 5 ways to do it, but I'm going to show you the one that I like the best. I like to email, but since email is a common thing most people know how to do, I feel like that's the best way to explain it at first. So we're going to email to myself the slides so they come up here on the screen. So what we'll do is exit out of that. All right, I'll get back to my computer. Now Google Slides allows you to go up to File, and probably PowerPoint has this too, I'm guessing. I can go to Email as Attachment. So it's going to use my Gmail account. I'm going to send it to myself, rob@zdrojewski.net. And notice I can attach it different ways here. I've tried the top two and they work identically the same. So whether it's attached as a PDF or a PowerPoint, it's not going to matter. It's going to look the same. Explain Everything is going to take each slide and make it a separate page. So it'll make separate pages automatically for you. I've never used plain text. I'm not sure why you would want that, but it just does exist. This is the title of the file. I don't even need to put them. Oh, actually, message here might say, grade this one for Julie. I'll use this as a little note to myself. Like, this is her final copy. This is the one I'm going to use for the gradebook. So I'll use this as a reminder to myself, because my students will share these Google Docs with me through Google Docs. So that I receive them all here, and, I can see everything submitted to me by the students. I'll open it and I'll say, yeah, this one's ready for grading, and then I'll do that. Email it as attachment. So I did that. Let's go and check my email. Not on here, though. On here, let's go check my email and refresh it. And it should be towards the top, and there it is. Mobile Learning Project. So what's attached is a PDF. It's going to take a moment there, and there it goes. It downloaded it. Tap on our icon. It should pull it up full screen, and you can see 3 separate slides. There it is right there. So from here, Apple gives us the new inter-app operability, I believe is what they call it, the export button up here. By choosing export, it now says, what do I have on my iPad that's going to let me bring in a PDF? I have a bunch of apps installed that will take a PDF. The one I want to use right now is right there, Explain Everything. So I can send it right directly to Explain Everything, pulls it in, it says, where would you like to import this? Because I was in process of a previous project, that's why this came up, I'll say I want to import it as a new project, and it's going to import in my slides. And it'll make them all separate slides, which is a convenient thing. Now, another way of doing this, besides emailing it in, is bringing it in directly over here, which is the multi-purpose add button. You could bring in files that way, or even if they were on the camera roll, you could bring them in as existing photos or videos. So again, I mentioned real good import and export capabilities with this app. That's why it has a lot of bells and whistles and makes it a really great app for this. So I could have pulled it in through File, which then will let me go right into my Google Drive directly and look at the titles of all my projects and pull them in directly that way. So just wanted to show you an alternative way to pull them in there. So now let's talk about the, let's see, my toolbar overview here. Again, a lot of things on the side here you can use. The key ones here being, this is the move command. So if I draw an object on the screen, I can then move it. The pencil command, and when you touch and hold, you get more options. So pen tip in the width like that, in colors. You then have the ability here to draw objects, such as touch and hold, so you can see different shapes, pre-drawn kind of shapes like that. You have your text tool like we were doing in the other app. I showed that a moment ago. You have your multiple bring in an object kind of thing. And there's one we're going to use on the next one, which is really cool, which is new video. That's how we'll do our picture-in-picture effect. The red X is a delete button. This is a laser pointer feature, which is kind of neat because then you touch and hold and you can see the red dot on the screen. You can't see my finger on the glass, so obviously that would be, if you need to point something out and tell everybody, you can use the laser pointer. Touch and hold that again, and it changes to other pointers. So maybe you want it to be an arrow instead. You can kind of do that too. And all that motion would be recorded as part of your screencast. Other things down here, undo button gives you information about stuff. Zoom in, zoom out. This is presentation mode, so that it gives you a reduced set. If you're going to literally present live doing it, you might want to use this view so your audience is not seeing all the toolbars. And then, of course, your color palette, and that's everything on the side. Now, across the bottom, we have more. We have our slides. If I tap on slide 1 of 3, you'll see a nice little slide navigator. And maybe you decide, you know what, this actually should be the last slide. So I'll touch and hold, and I'll slide it down. So you can instantly drag and move things around. Touch on it and hold, and you'll get a couple other options. That's to delete a slide, use the color palette in that slide, and 2x means to duplicate that slide in case you want to make another copy of it. So that's the navigation, forwards and backwards on that. Our familiar record button is here. We can even rewind, fast forward, and play. After we record something, we can play it back. I like this here. It tells you how long you've recorded for, and when you tap onto that, it actually shows you a timeline. So as I talk, you'll see the audio waveform showing up here. And if I draw stuff on the screen with my finger, that'll be in the top half of this track. So you can almost visually see where you were speaking and things that you were drawing on the screen. And if you decided that, well, I got to re-record over something, by tapping on that button right there, show you, it says you can either re-record over stuff, so record and the old stuff is gone, or mix it with the existing track. So your second time you speak is put in alongside the first time you speak. And there might be some cases where you want to do that. So that's a pretty new feature that they've just added in not too long ago. And then all of your export features are across the bottom here. First one is exporting as an image. So if you wanted to just do a screenshot of whatever's on your screen, you can do that. Next to it, though, is the one I use the most, which is exporting as a video. The common one, which I mentioned is really good about this app, export it directly to the camera roll, send it up to your YouTube account, or more. And look at all the more options that you have. And I'll pull this up, and you have all across the bottom here, iTunes, Dropbox, Evernote, Google Drive, WebDAV. There's even more added there. OneDrive, Vimeo, Youku, Soul. I haven't even heard some of these things. Sends PDF, XPLs, MP4s. So it really has a lot. They've expanded that over the years of ways to get your stuff out so that you can use it in an existing Blackboard, Angel, Desire to Learn, Edmodo, whatever you're using. You can still get your stuff into there and it doesn't lock you in. So now that I explained the toolbars, my next thing was to actually record something. So by recording, if I go back to slide 1, you're recording audio for just the slide that you're looking at, which I think is nice and less intimidating because right now all I want to talk about is my introduction to this slideshow. So I'll just make a little 10-second something here. Good afternoon, students, and welcome to our mobile learning devices for educational use. This will go with our Mod 3 unit that we're studying this semester. All right, so just that part I recorded. It's 8 seconds long. Again, I tap on the time code and you can see what I said was there. So if you needed to check your audio levels or whatnot, you could see if you were too loud. And you can go full screen playback. Now I can't play back because of the way I'm connected to the projector, but you would be hearing yourself through the speaker here on the iPad just to check if your voice sounds okay. Maybe it will go. Yeah, it might not go because of the way I'm hooked up here. So that's slide 1. If I'm happy with it, I move on now to slide 2, and I record on this slide. All right, highlights on this slide I want you to look at is the different stakeholders that I have indicated here as I show you with my little arrow. Stakeholders are very important when it comes to doing new technology initiatives because if you don't have buy-in, especially right here from the IT staff, these are the people that are going to support you day to day. So you really need to make sure that they know the educational value behind it and it doesn't just seem like yet another thing you're asking them to do. All right, so I stopped that. That was a little longer. That was 24 seconds long, and that's the recording on just that slide. Go on to the final slide, record what you want to say, even draw things on the screen, whatever you need to do, just like I was showing the annotation before. And then when it's all said and done, you export it out. Oops, wrong one. The one for movie. I typically send it directly to the camera roll, or I'll send it to my YouTube account. But this is where we get into a little bit of a sticky situation. I'm using an iPad 3, so this is a couple years old. If you have a newer iPad 5, that's the current one that's out there, and soon to be another one coming out, this processor will go faster because it's highly dependent on the graphics card and the processing power. But this was only, maybe a 1 minute worth of talking. And look how long it's still taking. It's taking a while to go here because all movement that I've made has to be rendered out. So this is the kind of thing that you might do and then go get a cup of coffee, or do this and then go to bed at night and it'll be done in the morning. It might take a while to process it out. So just keep that in mind that it's highly dependent on the newness of your iPad to process all that information. So I'm just going to cancel it so we don't have to sit through waiting for that. So you got to see that workflow for presenting PowerPoint slides. Again, just my voice in it. You didn't get to see me in it, which is what I'm going to kind of upgrade and show you on the next one. Yes?
What would happen to
They would all be included. Exactly what you recorded, all movements, all talking, all annotations would all be recorded as is. No, not there, no. The PowerPoint is just going to be the image itself. You've pulled that, you've imported that into here. Now from this point forward, it's just the motions that you make on the screen and the drawing of the arrows, things like that. And the more motion you have, the more times it takes to process. So just keep that in mind. If you go crazy with a lot of movement, it'll take you longer to publish it. I don't think it is, no. But in my 2 workflows from now, number 6, I'm going to show you the live web browser feature, so that might answer that question a little bit, because you can bring in you can import a live web browser and use that as part of your demonstration. Okay, so that was our number 4, presenting PowerPoint slides. We're going to move on now to annotating a PDF document. I've done this one before where a student takes their final project. In our case, it's called the common assignment because it's common across all instructors. And they spend a lot of time on it. So I want to just give them more than just a couple of notes in the margin. I want to actually talk almost face-to-face because I'm going to put my picture-in-picture window in there about what they've done, what they need to fix, and what they need to tweak before they turn it in as a final copy. So let's start this workflow over again. I'm going to go home here, start from the beginning of this app, and let's look at the laptop. I'll go into my Google Drive account, and I will have this one. So this is an actual student document, just a summary of what they're going to do for their final assignment. It was a lesson on Common Core Learning Standards with something with ELA. So I could, of course, use the Google Docs method and highlight stuff right-click and comment, and it would put the comments over here on the side. But I feel like I want to give more of a personal touch because they spent a good amount of time coming up with these proposals, and I do this maybe once or twice a semester, so not too frequently. So I'll spend the 5 minutes or so per student to do this workflow that I'm going to show you. So what I need to do now is, we need to see the toolbar. Same idea before, file and email as an attachment. And this time though, I'm going to send it as, and not the default, I'm going to send it again as a PDF to myself. And I'll say this one is for Sarah Jones. So I just sent myself an email. Now when I switch over to my iPad, let's go check my email. And we're done on that. Refresh. And it should pop up towards the top there if our Wi-Fi is still active. Come on, any second now. Okay, I gotta do something and come back then maybe. Yeah, yeah. That's the one thing that has to work. Oh, but I did send this to me before. Can I? Because I did this the other day. Let's go to all mail. Yeah, it's not gonna work. So it's gonna be hard to find. It should come up soon. All right, but in the meantime, let's do this. I'll switch back over to here. And can I refresh from here? And let's just send it again then. And we'll send it to another email address that I own. Email as attachment. Send it as a PDF. We'll send it to the School TV Made Easy at gmail.com. And send. Let's see if that goes quicker because we're doing that in the Google ecosystem then. Yep, there it goes. We got it. All right, so here's proof that it worked. Here's our email. There it is. I sent it to myself as a PDF attached. It even shows it here, which is kind of nice. Google does that for you. But I want to take it and open it. So there's usually a button at the bottom here. I lost it. Right there. I see Apple doing that today. Yeah, I know. We got a lot going on here. Yeah. Yes, go ahead. I'm going to resend again. Okay.
I use this specifically in a math class where we have different stations set up. Some of the kids are with me, some of the kids are with a regular teacher, and there's kids that are sitting and they're working independently, where they're watching what we just taught them, and then they can go back and look at it.
There we go. I got it.
Well, two ways that I've used it in. One, I supervise when I was in Zdrojewski. So when I've done that, I need to go through all their case notes and sign off on Medicaid because I don't feel like it's about it. So when I get Medicaid notes, I can have you sent to me. I can go through and you can tell me which is that I want to Medicaid income. Now, when I write my own notes, sometimes they're a little less lenient than somebody else's because it's my license, right? Call out, I can justify it verbally. But when somebody else, you need to make sure you have that compliance structure. I've also used it with therapy section so that when you have to do a data collection, you call it at the end, using our file authority, you can pull all of these out when you go to the meetings and show the changes in progress or the lack of progress, and you can rotate all of these different scenarios right on the document. I also tend to send them to the client's parents so that when we have a meeting, this is not a surprise. And then state ed rarely will audit them, but if they do audit, I have everything ready to go. So it's been shared with the district, it's been shared with the parents, I do find this to be very helpful. As God can see before we intern people, I don't love Google. I don't know why. I guess I'm old school. I like it. I like books. I don't like the mouse. I don't like the Kindle. But you know, as you move into things, you become more familiar. It becomes more logical as you do something a little bit more outside your scope and sequence.
So yep, and I learned something too. So now I can teach you something I just learned too. The Apple iPad doesn't make a little box like this when you have a document. It says PDF. It makes it so that it's actually viewable, so you can see all that. But if you just touch and hold anywhere on it, maybe you guys knew this, there it goes. That's what I was looking for. It brings up our Open In feature. So I'll open that and explain everything. It'll import it now as a PDF. And if it was a multiple page document, it would be multiple slides. In this case, it was just one page summary. So now, as I said, I want to personalize this for Sarah Jones here. I'm going to put myself somewhere in the little corner here. By using this feature, the add item, insert an object. It's a little bit odd. You might be thinking, I'm looking for webcam, I'm looking for picture-in-picture. They don't describe it that way. They describe it as a new video. So if you hit new video, it brings a window up where then you can reverse it. And using your fingers, you can pinch and zoom and put yourself wherever you want to be on that screen. And as I said, this is full motion video. It's 30 frames per second. So that's a lot of data that will take time to render out. So I wouldn't recommend leaving yourself in the entire time. I like to just give a little introduction to the student and then make that window go away. So here's how I do that. And this is Sarah, right? Okay, so here we go. Hi, Sarah. Okay, I messed up. Start over. See that? I did that on purpose. Because now I go like this. I rewind to the beginning again. And because I've chosen replaces existing, it's just going to re-record over it. And there you go. Hi Sarah, this is your instructor, Mr. Z here. I wanted to go over your common assignment. I thought you did a really great job with the Common Core learning standards that were cited, but a couple of things I want you to take a look at. So let's take a look. Now I just paused it. It was only 12 seconds. I think that's fine. She knows that it's me making it and makes that personal connection that there's my teacher working with me kind of thing. So now I'll delete that. So I hit the delete button. That's gone. And now I will resume recording. Okay, so what I wanted to look at first is down here where you had the digital learning age environments. Okay, particularly here we talked about using the ISTE standards for coaches, and I noticed that you didn't put those in here when you wrote up this paragraph here. So I want you to take a look at that. So other than that, it looks great. Let me know if you have any other questions in Edmodo. Thanks. Now that was a quick one. It's just a one-pager, but typically these are a couple pages long. So I just, for brevity here, I just wanted to keep it short. But that way, she got the image of that's me, her professor, working with her on that. I talked specifically about something here that maybe I felt was better verbally to say rather than putting in text-based comments in the margins. And so I can send this video to her. My workflow usually for this is to throw it up onto my YouTube account. And upon doing that, I don't think I'm logged in here, so this may not work. Yeah, but underneath that screen there, where the login screen is, you have the ability to make it as an unlisted video. That means anyone with the link can watch it without having to log in, but it's a very obscure link, so no one would stumble across that video by accident. You know, it's like a needle in a haystack kind of thing. They call that security by obscurity, I think, basically. So it's a link. As long as I send that link to Sarah, she can watch that video. Anybody that has that link could watch it, but there's no logging in needed for that. And because it's on YouTube, it's stored there on my angle for free. Maybe banner ads might pop up on it, but that's only if it gets watched a lot, and chances are this won't. And there's no issues of bandwidth or storage limitations. It's YouTube, so it's available to use at no cost. So that's how I give feedback on a document, something like that I want to get a little bit more personal on.
It will be a little bit shorter time during the office hours. I do have a colleague who's at the University of Buffalo doing supervision of students in the FEAST program. And she said she constantly needs to go through about etiquette with clients because we have children to adults. And she said the rate of speech that they're using is so fast, still patients have no idea what's being said. She constantly would do one of these little feedback pieces so that when they have the next interaction with the client, they can actually use this simultaneously on their iPad. So they can have this okay with points that she's made in the notation that she's in the therapeutic session.
Other things, since we're on the main page here of Explain Everything, under the Settings gear icon, notice you have a lot of options you can choose between. They even have very specific stylus, styli, I should say, plural, that you can use that are brand names like the Pogo Connect, the Adonit, the Crago iPen. I have one of them. I think I have the Adonit one. Works really well because you can rest your palm on the glass and it won't make those little stray marks because your palm is on it. So it truly turns this device into a tablet that you can rest your arm on and write on with a special stylus, especially good for math demonstrations and drawing, and not get those little stray marks on there. Export options if you want to go low, medium, and high, even picking the resolution. So we're really talking high-level technical stuff there. When you record, the resolution of the cameras and the different accounts that you can have tied in, you can see there's a lot of them there, to let you import and export from. Next to that, under the information, I really found the video tutorials helpful, and also the iBook guide. If you click on that, it'll load up a iBook that this company has made that is a good tutorial on all the different features. And quite honestly, that's how I learned all the different nooks and crannies of this app, was by taking a look at the iBook guide that's linked right there for free. So I brought us to this page so I can now work on the next one, which is my workflow number 6, how to use the live web browser feature. So the goal here is we want to demonstrate something that's on the web, but I want to do more than just have a screenshot. Because yes, I could do the typical take a screenshot of something trick. Does everyone know about this? On any iOS device, including iPhone and iPod, whatever's on your screen at any given time, if you want to take a screenshot of that, do you know the trick to do that? We call that the 2-button trick. Press and hold one of the buttons, the lock button, and then press the other button. And that just took a photograph of that screenshot. Now, I could make a screencast out of a bunch of screenshots I just made, but I think it's, I was going to say, more cool. It's more dynamic to have a live web page that you can type in web addresses to and scroll up and down the pages and just have like a live web browser as compared to just static screenshots. So what we'll do is a demonstration of that I have done with my 7th and 8th graders about digital footprints. And so I'm going to start a brand new project, give us the white canvas, and using the add, insert, and object, I'm this time going to choose a new browser. And it's like having Safari inside of your bar here. So I can type right in here and put in, I'll put in my blog, robztraining.com, go. So it's a live working web browser inside of your screencasting canvas. And in this particular instance, I want to teach my students about live documents versus dead documents. In other words, if I put a file attachment up there like my resume, that's a dead document. That means it doesn't change. I have to do a lot of work to update it. But if it's a living document linked to a Google Doc, now I can change it on the back end and not have to touch this website. It'll always be up to date. So I'll make a little 60-second screencast here that I've done with my students, showing how the live web browser feature works. So here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you remember we talked about our digital footprints, we want to make sure that our blog has the pertinent information right at the top. And if I use my 2 fingers, I can scroll, let's see, up and down the blog here, and show you that the posts I have, always the ones at the top are the newest ones, and you'll always see some sort of a link back to a logo. Logos are important to always have on your blog post because it really brings it to life and catches someone's attention more than just a paragraph full of text. But I want to really focus up here where it says on your digital resume, where you guys have that for your digital resumes. Let's tap on that, going to here, double tap. You'll load up, in my case, what I call a living document. This is a Google Doc that lives online. So as I need to change this, I can make any changes I need to and not ever have to relink it back to my blog. Now the opposite of that, kind of the old school way of doing things, would be to put up an email attachment there, such as a PDF document. The problem with that is every time you have to make a change, you have more steps involved because now you have to go in and change the links and the header, and it's just kind of a tedious thing that would be much easier to avoid. Also, I have my presentations and workshops link. This is a living document, and anytime I come up with a new idea, I could just go right into my Google Drive account, add on number 17, and type in a paragraph, and there it is, and it's good to go. I don't have to go back into the Blogger site and change the header link and change the text and all of that. So those little tricks like that you'll find as you maintain your digital footprint online, which again we talked about is a very important thing to do, so in the future you are positively Googleable. So that's the screencast for today. Thanks for watching. Alright, so that was 1 minute and 38 long. If I tried doing that live in front of 20-some kids, I know I would only catch some of them. Some of them I talked too fast or they weren't sure what I was referring to, But having this minute and 38 to watch now anytime you want, before class, during class, or after class, I think helps demystify highly technical things. I feel like I could teach anybody anything on a computer if I can make a screencast for them. Because then I can get them to say, well, what did you mean when you talked about a living document? Now I know I can go back and make another screencast or have that face-to-face conversation about a piece that they didn't understand. So in terms of efficiency, I think watching a video to learn something new is many times advantageous instead of doing it directly face-to-face from the start. I think the face-to-face part comes after you've consumed something online in form of video. All right, so that was my live browser demonstration. You can see minute 38, I could simply publish it, and that one's good to go. So any questions on that workflow? And I should mention too, I keep hitting no because I'm not saving them, but if I said yes, I could put a file name in, and I could resume where I left off and continue on. The other apps that I showed you earlier, you can't do that. You get one shot to do it, and the party's over. Here you can resume where you left off, which is nice because you might be working on a project over a longer time frame. All right, so that was number 6, using the live web browser. The last one I have to show you here before we get to some independent work time, and we'll see if maybe, I don't know if Sarah wants to present anything or not. Okay, we'll see if she wants to, is my telestration example using another app made by the TechSmith company. I'm kind of plugging their products here, but I honestly have been using them the most, called Coach's Eye. Has anyone ever used this one before? All right, it's really intended for the audience of sports because you might want to get a slow motion of how you're doing a push-up and be able to watch it in slow motion and frame by frame, draw things on it, annotate. That's right. I did use it for bowling, yes. Because in slow motion we showed how the arm was going, and I had them on purpose record me, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize my foot went up that high when I did a thing. And so then, like, okay, next time I do it, I'll see if I keep my foot down, if that makes a change. Yeah, on my phone actually I have some golf footage of swinging a golf club. It can go up to 120 frames per second, so you can really see you'd be amazed at the flex in a club as you're hitting it, how that goes. But the example I have here is actually my father-in-law, Elaine's father, he had knee surgery done, he had back surgery and knee surgery, so he's in physical therapy for recovery. The purpose of me showing you this is we want to look very closely at the angle of how far he can bend when he's doing this exercise. And then taking it one step further, let's imagine that I had footage from 2 weeks after, and we could do a side-by-side comparison and show how it was in week 1 versus week 3. So here's how we do that, pointing out the features here. Along the bottom is our scroll bar. This shows us we're about a quarter of the way through. So, yeah. In his mind, he's going a full 90 degrees, but in reality, it's only going that degrees there. So it's kind of nice for self-reflection that way, too, to see that. So the bar at the bottom is your scrub bar. You can manually use your finger to go forwards and backwards. You have slow motion mode up here. If you turn it on and then play it, it will go automatically for you in slow motion. Turn off slow motion, it goes in regular speed. And I think it just repeats the clip when it reaches the end, maybe. Or maybe not. You have to repeat it anyways. But the real power here is the ability to pinch and zoom. So if you need to show something up close, you can zoom in on it at any time. And then your annotation tools along the side. We have shapes we can draw. So if we tap it again, we can pick the color. So if you wanted to draw a highlight on that, you can show how angles are going. You even have some advanced features that you can buy, such as an angle tool, or if you were to draw a line and a line, it would show you the amount of degrees between that, which is really kind of neat. But there's an add-on feature, I think it's an in-app purchase for like $5 to do that. So let me wipe that clear, and let's make a screencast now. I'll pretend I am his doctor. I'm going to totally make this up as I go. Oh wait, I was recording. That's okay, start over. All right, let's take a look, Mark, at the angle of flexion that you have going on. When you go to your maximum distance that you can go, we're looking at an angle of approximately here. Our goal, though, is to get you to be more towards this level. It doesn't have to be a complete 90 degrees, but if we can get you more towards the red line, that distance there is going to show improvement. So let's see if in 2 weeks from now we can do that and show the improvement when you are flexing. And stop. Okay, so that was a recording. My voice would be heard if I had this hooked up and wasn't presenting on a projector. But it does take a few moments to render, as you can see. And again, this is a slower iPad. It's version 3, so it'll take a little longer than most of them out there nowadays. but it'll build an analysis, then you can play it. You have the zooming, and when I have my kids make these, they got to have 3 things: zooming, talking, and annotation. They have to include all 3 things when they analyze something. My students have done everything from making a ponytail, tying a shoe, proper way to do a sit-up, the correct posture and sitting in a chair, how to hold a mouse and avoid wrist fatigue. Anything that involves physicalness, that playing it and annotating it in slow motion would be beneficial. So I give them the ability to pick the topic of your choice. Here's the tool, here's how you use it. Now show me something, teach me something that I can learn because it's in slow motion, and because you can annotate and narrate for it. So I think, yeah, it's done. We go to done, and then it allows you to share it out. And the sharing features, basic features are sending it to the camera roll, putting it on YouTube, like the other apps that were there. But they even have some cloud sharing capabilities where they call it VIP sharing options, where you have even more ability to share it a bunch of different ways. I haven't really gotten into that, but I even like the ability to send it via message too. To send it, if it's under 1 minute, you can send it as an instant message to somebody else too. Mm-hmm. It will upload it, and upon finishing the upload, it now gives you the link. Yep. And that's assuming you've logged into your YouTube account. The first time you do it, it'll ask you to log in, but thereafter it'll be stored for you. Oh, that's right too. Yeah. It'll get red flagged. Yeah, from the Chevy Chase movie. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to be mindful of what product you're using and you're sharing out. You should follow the copyright law and things.
So instead, I put it on Google Drive. And it worked just fine there. Because stuff you put on Google Drive is your own personal stuff. You have free space, but I bought a bigger account. So stuff there is yours, and you can do what you want. So there's always ways around, I guess, when something doesn't work the way that you need to. The last thing I want to share on this one is I mentioned the double feature, the side-by-side feature. Let's say that we had a second clip. We could go to compare, and I actually use the same clip. But let's say he wore the same clothes 2 weeks from now, and we put in another one side by side. You can independently control each one on its own, or you can link the 2 together so they both move together at the same time, which it's kind of freezing right now. But there's a way to get a link and unlink. And so you could show the difference between week 1 versus week 3 and do a side-by-side comparison. So this is a really neat app for doing telestration. It's available on the iPhone as well, on Android devices, and now on Windows devices, Windows tablets too. So it's one of those apps that's really catching on. And that is my workflow number 7. So that gets to the end of the meat and potatoes of screencasting on iOS devices. What I want to do for the remainder of the time, which is, did we hit 3 o'clock yet? Yes, we're just at 3 o'clock. I'll take a few moments and show you the traditional way of screencasting, meaning doing it on a desktop or a laptop. I've done complete workshops just on that where we never even talked about iPads. So I want to give you both worlds, kind of the new world here and the older world here. Because honestly, given the choice, if I had to make a screencast, I'm probably going to go here first on my MacBook and make it here. Because I have a mouse and I have a keyboard. And I'm used to that and I like that, and that's my generation. But I know that these things are not to be ignored, so there's advantages of using the tablet too. So I want to spend a couple minutes showing you that so you can see what I like to use for screencasting when we're talking about traditional. And then, does Sarah, are you interested in presenting? Or? Okay, and maybe a couple minutes I'll have you show something from your world of special education that I'm not familiar with. All right, so going through our number 7 here on our outline. On the Windows and Mac platforms, we have Jing, Snagit, and Camtasia Studio. How many have used any of those? All right, so we got a bunch of, more than half people have used that. Jing's been around for a while. They used to have something called Jing Pro, which gave you, it was a paid feature. You paid an annual fee for it. And it gave you more features. It gave you a better quality recording. Since TechSmith decided about a year and a half ago to get rid of Jing Pro, I've stopped using Jing. Instead, I've used the middle-of-the-road one here, which is called Snagit. I like Snagit better than Jing because of the fact that there's not a limit to how long you can record. You can record for more than 5 minutes. It's an unrestricted length of time. Also, Snagit records in an MP4 video format, which is more what we would call CD quality audio in universal format, whereas Jing records in the old-fashioned SWF, which is shockwave, which is your browser has to support that, and you can run into some roadblocks there. So if you really If money's a problem, go with Jing. But if not, $29 for an individual education license, which we have one to give away today too, is, I think, well worth it. And I think it goes down to like 12 bucks each if you get more than 20 copies or so. So many institutions like my middle school, we got a bunch of teachers that wanted to do it. We bought volume licensing, and we're all using Snagit to make our screencasts. Snagit's been around for, I think, over 15 or 20 years. It's been around a long time, but it really was just for screen captures, for images, still images, that you would annotate and draw on top of. Then, in more recent years, they brought in the video recording capability, and really, 99% of the time, that's what I use it for making videos, not so much screenshots. But you have the ability to do both. And then Camtasia Studio gives you a full-blown timeline. I'm using it now to record this presentation, so when I'm done, if you see at the end, it'll pull up a 3-hour-long timeline. Everything I recorded is on there, so I can chop out pieces if need be, like when we took a break or something, so you have more editing capability there. But luckily, Snagit was just upgraded in the past couple of months, so you can trim with Snagit. I'm going to do that now. So Snagit is loaded already on my machine. This is in software you must install on the local machine. There is now a Snagit extension up here that if you're using Chrome, there's a Chrome browser, where you can use it completely in the browser. It's very experimental because it's very new. I still don't use it too much, but I like what they're doing with it, because now that means my students, from home or from school, can use that app for free and make their screen captures and make their videos. But that only came out at the end of last school year, so I haven't even had time to play with that so much yet. So this is the traditional software installed on the machine. You buy a license per machine. We hit the big red record button, and then we choose what area of the screen we want to record. In this case, I don't need everything. Let's say I'm just going to talk about these 2 paragraphs, so I'll stop there with it. Now this is where the workflow has changed more recently. At this point, now I decide, do I want to take a still screenshot, because maybe I want to draw stuff on top of this, or do I want to make a video out of it? They changed that. It used to be you chose, do I want photo or video, then I choose my area. Now it's the opposite. And I kind of like the way they did that, because it helps you to make screencasts quicker. It's hard to explain, but when you get into the flow of making screencasts, it's a nice workflow. So I've decided already I want to make a video out of this. I'll click on the video button there. And it says it's ready to record. You can see as I'm speaking, my microphone built into the to the laptop here is working. So I'll hit record. And here goes. Should give me a countdown. I'm doing Camtasia at the same time. Yeah, you know what? I'm doing Camtasia at the same time, so this might not work. This might freeze if I try to do